Good evening, ladies. In today's video, we're going to be discussing Celestia. So if you've been following my channel for a while, you've probably seen that I've been extremely bullish on Solana. I've been buying Solana hand over fist for months, but now that Solana's already kind of pumped, it's already gone up like 3x, we're starting to look for the next 10x opportunities. And Celestia might just fit that bill. P.S. I do still think in a good case scenario, Solana could still be a 10x. However, obviously the upside has been reduced. Now, I actually did a video on Celestia back when nobody had heard of it, nobody was talking about it. I did it 9 months ago, kind of explained what Celestia was and said that upon the day of launch, I'm probably going to buy into this launch. And although it went 3x after the launch, guess who didn't buy it? Guess who didn't take his own advice? Guess who kind of forgot about the project? Me. But why was I very bullish on Celestia in that video, and why am I still bullish on Celestia for the next couple of years? So Celestia actually, it's a new architecture for a blockchain, and it solves the blockchain trilemma. So the last coin that solved the blockchain trilemma, so if you don't know what the blockchain trilemma is, it essentially says that you can't have all three aspects to a blockchain. You can't have security, scalability, and perfect decentralization. Like, you have to sacrifice one of them or all of them a little bit. And Vitalik came up with that term, and he's trying to solve it through the use of layer 2s and layer 3s eventually. But Solana actually solved this problem using proof of history. So that was a big breakthrough for blockchains, and that's why Solana kind of like manages to solve this trilemma and manages to max out all the stats. Now Celestia has Solana did it using a proof of history model, but Celestia is coming in with this new architecture for a blockchain. It's one of the biggest breakthroughs in blockchain architecture, like probably since Ethereum itself or Solana itself. So rightly so, the devs, the nerds, the blockchain geeks are going mad for this coin. They really like this coin. I think Solana is a good example of a good comparison for a coin that kind of came up with a new architecture, came up with a new feature that is innovative and useful. So Celestia is going to, just like Solana, potentially be very scalable, very cheap, very fast, and decentralized. So how does Celestia solve this problem? So let me try and explain it in layman's terms. If you want a deeper dive into the technicals, you can refer to my previous video on this. I dive a bit deeper. It's actually quite a good video. I'd recommend watching it. Or you can watch someone else's video if you want a really deep dive on the technicals. But I'm just going to try and explain it in simple terms. I'm not like a technology expert whatsoever. So it should be fairly easy to understand if I'm the one explaining it. So essentially there's two different types of blockchains. There's a monolithic blockchain, or an integrated is a better term, an integrated blockchain, or a modular blockchain. So with an integrated blockchain, all the aspects of a blockchain are done in the layer 1, all on the layer 1 blockchain. So the consensus, the final settlement, and the data availability is all on the layer 1 blockchain. So a Solana is an example of that. And a data availability is essentially like actually where the block data is. So anyone can, like the availability of that data, anyone can go in and read the blocks of data, the blocks of transactions essentially. Whereas with a modular chain, these functions are separated onto different layers. So Celestia is an example of a modular chain, and it has this new approach where the Celestia blockchain handles the consensus and the data availability. So what's so great about this? Why is that interesting? Because consensus is actually the hardest part to do in a blockchain. Why is consensus the hardest? It's because to actually have a well decentralized consensus mechanism, you need to put load of nodes all around the world. If you want it to be decentralized, all these independent parties, and to get someone to pay to set up this node in their room or at their warehouse or at their or using Amazon Web Services, like, it's a tall order. It's not easy, it's very technical, and it also costs money. So a lot of people don't want to do that. So if you want to start up your own blockchain, if you want to have a new crypto project, new crypto application, you can now just plug into the Celestia. You can spin up your own blockchain, you can spin up your own rollup, and you can just plug in to the consensus and data availability of Celestia. And the nice thing about Celestia is that if you want to do that, you have to pay in Celestia tokens, the TIA tokens. Whereas, for example, with the likes of Arbitrum or Optimism, the gas fees for using the Arbitrum or The gas fees for using the Arbitrum or the Optimism network are paid in Ethereum. So the Optimism token or the Arbitrum token, like in my eyes, are essentially worthless. Like, okay, cool, I can use it for governance of the Arbitrum ecosystem, but in reality, who gives a about that? Like, I don't want to vote on Arbitrum stuff. I'm not going to buy tokens so I can vote on Arbitrum proposals. The only reason I'd buy Arbitrum tokens is for speculation. However, with Celestia, there is actually a fundamental use case for the TIA token. So that's something I definitely like to see. Actual utility for the token is definitely something that makes me horny. So what are some other advantages of this architecture? So for example, if I want to create this crypto application, I want to put a smart contract on top of Ethereum, I have to use Solidity, which is Ethereum's programming language. I have no freedom. Whereas with Celestia, I can use any programming language I want. I can create my own blockchain that is specifically designed for the crypto application that I'm trying to create. So essentially, it gives you a lot more freedom, and then you can just plug in, do the hard part using Celestia, the consensus. Now, the other huge breakthrough that Celestia came up with, well, they didn't come up with, but the creator of Celestia, along with Vitalik Buterin, wrote a research paper a few years ago on data availability sampling. So what is the data availability sampling? It essentially means that instead of like whoever's reading the blocks, instead of them reading the entire block of transactions, so a block is just like a load of transactions, and they have to verify that all those transactions are legitimate in a normal blockchain. However, with data availability sampling, you just take a small sample of that block and ensure those transactions are legitimate. Now, the person putting through the block doesn't know which ones are going to get sampled, so they have to make sure that they're all legitimate transactions as well. Otherwise, it's not going to go through. Now, obviously, you're probably thinking, oh, there's probably ways to game that system. That doesn't seem very secure, but these guys have been working on it for years now, and they've done all the calculations and made it so it is secure. But the advantage to this, it obviously means that because you don't have to read all the transactions, your blocks can go through cheaper and faster. So that there's basically unlimited scalability, which is a huge breakthrough as well. Okay, so that's the TLDR on the technology. I hope I did a good enough job and you kind of have an idea of why this project is actually very interesting. It is one of the biggest breakthroughs in blockchain architecture, so it is a big deal, this project. But let's compare Celestia to some other layer 1, layer 2 projects by market cap. So a lot of people have been comparing Celestia to Aptos and Sui, which both launched recently enough as well, but they launched at higher market caps and have been down only since they launched. Like, you could say like maybe they didn't launch it, they launched at the very peak of the bear market, and Celestia is launching into the start of a bull market, so that's why Celestia is pumped while the other two have dumped. But Celestia actually launched at a lower market cap, so that allowed it to pump. And the fact that you're launching at a lower market cap helps you, like, people making money in your project is going to help create a community. People who are believers and people who are like, oh, I like this project, it's made me money. So it actually helps form a community, whereas no one really cares about Aptos and Sui. But nevertheless, the market cap of Aptos, $2 billion, and its fully diluted valuation, $8 billion. Sui, market cap of $600 million, fully diluted valuation, $6 billion. So these are two projects that don't have a huge amount going for them. Like, they didn't have huge breakthroughs in blockchain technology, but they're just like new alternative layer 1s. Now, let's compare it to Celestia. Circulating market cap of $800 million, fully diluted $6 billion. So as you can see, there's still a lot of tokens to be released onto the market. There's only a small proportion in the circulating supply right now. So that obviously is a drawback. But we'll talk about the tokenomics a little bit further on. But I also want to compare it to another token that has been performing very well, which is Injective. And as you can see, Injective actually has a higher market cap than Celestia, but a lower fully diluted valuation. So Injective actually has most of its tokens in circulation, which is great to see. So that is one of the nice things about Injective. But Injective is also a layer 1 blockchain, but it's it's more of a decentralized exchange is the product that they're offering rather than what Celestia is offering. So the founder of Celestia is this guy, Mustafa Al-Bassam. He's the guy who wrote that paper with Vitalik on data availability sampling. But he's also like a well-known hacker back in the day. Back in the day when he was around 18 years old, he hacked a load of top websites, and he didn't hack it for money, he didn't hack it he didn't do anything with the hack, he just hacked it to show he could and just to show how poor their security was. So like this team is completely stacked. The Celestia's team is extremely strong. So you can see some of them here. The creator of Optimistic Rollups, the co-founder of Harmony, like these are big blockchains that this team has created in the past. So they know what they're doing. Okay, so now let's move on to the tokenomics. So I watched an interview that James from Invest Answers did, and he basically said the tokenomics for Celestia are terrible, and that's why he wouldn't invest in it personally. So let's have a look at the tokenomics for Celestia. So the first thing we'll look at is their inflation. So the first thing we'll look at is their inflation. Their inflation starts at 8% annually and reduces by 10% each year. So the next year it's going to be 7.2%, etc., all the way until it reaches 1.5%. So you're probably thinking, that's fine, the market could easily eat up 8% inflation. But that is not the same as token unlocks. The inflation is just the inflation from staking rewards. There's actually a huge amount of token unlocks that are set to hit the market over the next coming years. So here's a chart of the token unlocks over the next coming years. So the first thing I saw is that we have a full year where it's purely game on. There's no token unlocks for at least 1 year. And then the token supply is going to almost double and then almost double again the following year. So a lot of tokens hitting the market during the next bull run. I'm thinking maybe they did that on purpose. They know what the 4-year cycles. They wanted to launch at the start of a bull run and let their early investors dump on retail during the peaks of the next mania. Like that's kind of how it looks. Maybe it's just a coincidence though. But what I do see is that for the next year, there is no token unlocks. So you might be thinking, oh my god, that's amazing. There's no token unlocks. There's 800 million market cap and no more tokens to come out for at least a year. But you do have to remember that some of those insiders will hedge their position, like all their tokens that they have, they will hedge their position by shorting the coin. So they're essentially selling their coin early. But what I will say to that point, like a lot of the early investors, I think there's Chris Berninsky, there's Balaji, there's a lot of really smart guys who would invest in this and probably would have a long-term outlook on this and probably want to invest on this for the long term. They probably actually do believe in this project as it is a very fundamentally strong project. So they're not just VCs who are like, oh, I'm going to get an early investment and then dump on retail in the next bull run, potentially. And this is just a comparison to the Solana initial supply schedule. It launched in 2020 and then pretty much all the tokens came, a big batch of tokens all came at the same time onto the market. And then from then it's just been staking rewards. So there is a lot of early investors in Celestia. Not an absolutely massive public allocation, but not minuscule either. So the tokenomics aren't great, but I think that would be the only thing holding Celestia back. I think this is a very, very strong project fundamentally. So I will be creating a small spot position. Hopefully it dips a little bit so I can get in. Hopefully it doesn't just continue to rip higher and higher. But I do want to build a small position, research it a bit further, keep having a look if it's trending, if people are talking about it, if a community is being formed around Celestia, and then potentially add to that position if that starts to happen, if people start to actually use the Celestia blockchain, if people are plugging in their own applications, if cool things are being built on the blockchain. And with a market cap under $1 billion, with no further token allocations apart from staking rewards for the next year, it does seem like a very interesting play going into the next bull market. I could easily see Celestia as a 10x opportunity within the next year before the next token unlocks happen. But as I said, you want to keep an eye on Twitter, on YouTube, if people are talking about it. You want to keep an eye on the fundamentals, like the statistics. I'll be updating you. I'll be continuing to research into Celestia. So I really do think this project has a lot of potential going into the next bull run. So thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. I really hope you learned something, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Cheers.